I am tearing up.
I just about screamed right now, and I'm not even there.
Now that's inspirational, Natalie. I feel inspired today.
I could be here for another hour.
And I was talking to my class. There were only 2 of us, and the other guy was in the hospital. So here I am.
And I always go, he winds up homeless on the street. It's my fault.
Yeah, now you sound like my wife.
And you can get off.
I don't know. Call it Google. Or call it Google.
Yeah, we're in control. Alexa, how did you get across?
Paul, I cut you off earlier. What were you going to say?
What?
Dang it! Don't do that to me, Paul. Don't do that to me, man.
I don't know what got into my head, but I thought this thought, if I'm working year round, I might as well get paid year round.
Sweet Talk is a weekly 20-minute podcast brought to you by the Continuing Education and Workforce Training Division of Idaho State University's College of Technology. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud, and subscribe today. Now, it's time to get started with Sweet Talk.
Hello, everyone. It is Paul Dickey once again with Sweet Talk, our weekly podcast here at Continuing Education Workforce Training, Idaho State University. And as again, always, Gary Salazar, our director, is with me today. How are you doing today, Gary?
I'm doing great, Paul. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us on your vacation day to help us make this a great podcast. I appreciate that.
I was going to bring that up because, did you notice my intro wasn't as smooth as it always is?
He didn't have that big megalomaniac circus entertainer intro. I can tell you're chilling out, man. That's cool.
I'm at home. It's for people who are listening, we are recording this just as we enter into the Memorial Day weekend, and I've kind of started mine a little early, but I knew who we were having on the show today, so I could not miss it.
Yeah, having a guest like Jason Knapp, Chef Jason Knapp is always special. So we want to be there. I understand you want to be there for this thing. You don't want me to flub up, but more importantly, you just want to have a good time talking with Jason, and that's cool.
Well, I know he's done something recently that I'm really kind of curious about. So I wanted to be here to hear the stories. I guess maybe just the beginning of some stories.
Yeah, I think he's got some potential for some great stories here. But let's go ahead and get started. Thank you again for the intro, Paul. Welcome everybody to Sweet Talk. We have Chef Jason Knapp, although it looks like Nicole Knapp is attending. Oops, and we are part of a follow-up podcast with Chef Jason, who has really taken off and done some fun things since the last time we spoke to him. So we'll be going and talking a little bit about that. But some of you who remember the conversations we had with him, former chef with Cisco, Red River region in Arkansas. He retired. He's become a world traveler. He's got his own podcast now, Chef and Podcast. This guy is just taking off and enjoying the life. So we want to get back with him and touch base and maybe have a couple of podcasts following this and talk about the world of chefdoms. Jason, it's so nice to see you again. Thank you for coming back and joining us. I hope you're doing well as we go into this Memorial Day holiday. You're going to have some fun?
So, but first of all, I want to say, man, what an intro. I mean, I need y'all to just follow me around every day. You wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You're like, Gary, Paul, go ahead and introduce me to the day, please. That was awesome. It's good stuff. And yeah, I think Memorial Day weekend is always great. We've got a great group of friends that we get together with and, remember who we need to remember. And it's going to be a great time. We got a little party tonight, and then maybe on Monday. Last Memorial Day was very important to me. I fell and broke my collarbone playing kickball, so that will not be done again this Memorial Day. There will be no kickball in my future. Dangerous sport like kickball. You can't
kickball, yes.
So yeah, it's we're excited. Good times. Have me on the podcast.
Excellent. So I would imagine because of your cooking prowess, you are always relegated to cooking during Memorial Day?
Typically, yes. If I show up early, which I've learned my lesson, you walk in and go, oh, hey, you're just in time. We got hamburgers, hot dogs, all the things. Like, okay. All right, here we go.
So you get conscripted into doing
all the time. Yeah, that's kind of a occupational hazard. Hey, Jason knows how to do that. Yeah, yes, I do. Great. Awesome. Yeah. Good stuff.
Well, speaking of sharing your wisdom and your expertise with everybody, how has your podcast been going, chefing? You know, because we know that you wanted to go in that direction. Obviously, you got some great equipment in front of you now that we can see. You must be doing very, very well.
Oh, this is from my wonderful sister Jackie. She got me the microphone and the headphones. No, it's Chef and Podcast is doing great. You guys helped me really kick it off, and I couldn't have done it without y'all's help and all the emails and phone calls back and forth. How do you do this? How do you set this up? What does this look like? But overall, it's been great. I've loved having the guests on there. I love being able to stay in touch with all the chefs that I've known through my career, and then even some shameless requests on Instagram. I just reach out to people I follow. Hey, you want to be on my podcast? And they would say yes. Fantastic. That sounds great. I've never met you before in my life. Okay, let's get this going.
Well, you know, it's, you know, we interview a lot of people on our podcast, and you know, Gary will attest to this. I typically go into these things cold, so that I can actually have a nice conversation that stirs, you know, questions stir as they speak. So I imagine going in with a podcast with someone you don't know, you have plenty to talk about.
Well, you do. And I don't go in quite as cold just because mine's a little more scripted on, you know, we've got a couple parts in there, but still, I mean, I do my research, if you want to call it that. It's more stalking than it is anything. Hey, whatever. And then if I ask for a bio and they don't send me one, then you're like, okay, I'm just going to make one up for you, I guess. So it's good. And it is interesting because you get all sorts of perspective. I've talked to, you know, an FDA or USDA inspector from New York. I talked to another lady from New York, another guy from North Carolina. So it gets you out there and gets you introduced to all sorts of people. So it's great.
Well, that's kind of cool. You know, your new podcast allows you to touch some individuals that you, or reach out to some individuals that you have not interacted with before. Have you? I mean, the USDA person. I mean, how did that connection come about?
So I had a buddy of mine that I worked with in Houston, and this guy just took on to the fact that I was doing a podcast. And so he would send me emails randomly. Hey, this is my buddy Manny, and he's doing a cookbook about bodegas in New York. I think y'all would get along. Okay. Hey, I'll reach out to Manny. Yes. And then I got another girl named Daisy from my buddy in Houston, and he was just plugging some people in. And then one of them, the guy from North Carolina, was the shameless Instagram asked. And then the same with Spiceology. So I had Tony Reed from Spiceology. I had met the guy once in my previous career and just reached out again. And he said, absolutely, I'd love to do it. So everybody's been really, really nice about coming on, and all the shows have been great. I mean, and it's because of the guests. It's not because of me. It's the guests make the show.
That's absolutely true, Jason. The guests do make the show. It's just, you know, me and Gary, we come on and we're great and everything, but you know, it's the guests that really kind of spur the conversation, and you know, introduce new concepts, ideas, and things to our world that we don't know about, and spark, you know, get that conversation going.
Absolutely. Well, you're right. You know, and you've become a podcast personality now, Jason. And congratulations. I mean, and we all learn stuff as we go. I mean, even Paul and I still mess up on stuff from time to time and go, oops, you know, we got to redo this thing and all. But it's a fun journey. You not only learn stuff about the technology and what it takes to put on a podcast, but you do meet so many interesting people out there. So cool on you for doing that. But speaking of learning new things, you know, I like to characterize you as a world traveler, experiencing chef. You just recently were traveling over there in Europe, right?
I was. My wife and I were fortunate enough to fly to London, and then right off the plane in London, we jumped onto the Euro train and went to Paris, spent 2 nights in Paris, then took the train back, and then spent 7 days in London. So it was a phenomenal trip. Really, really fun.
Wow.
That's exceptional. What a cool thing to be able to do. So obviously we're going to have to ask you a question about the food in Paris and the food in London.
Yeah.
You must have sampled a good bit and tried things out. What are some of your best experiences you remember from both of those places?
So, I mean, honestly, just Paris is just a food mecca. I mean, there's just so many things to see and eat and do. And I tried to eat everything, all that Paris had to offer. I would say right off the bat, what was so fun and interesting is just the culture. The culture is there are cafes up and down the street. Every street has a dozen cafes on it, and there's, patios on every street. I mean, every side of the street, there's, a dozen tables with, 2 or 3 chairs, and they're extremely tight, extremely close together. And so, at 8 a.m, you're having a croissant and espresso, and somebody's sitting literally elbow to elbow with you, ripping a cigarette. And you're sitting there like, hey, I feel like a Parisian. All right. So, but it was, the food was really, really just fantastic. I mean, we walked probably 10 miles each day in Paris. So, and, you'd be walking and you have a destination, like if you're going to the Louvre or the Arc de Triomphe or whatever. And then all of a sudden you go, hey, that cafe looks pretty nice. Let's stop and have an espresso, or let's stop and have an adult beverage, depending on what time of the day it was. But the atmosphere there, like we stopped at 2 p.m. at a really local spot, and you have somebody having, the steak and French fries over here with a glass of wine. And these are all locals. And you're like, what do you do for a living that allows you to just have 2 glasses of red wine, a steak and fries at 2 p.m? I would be done the rest of the day. And it's just a little more free, a little more fun atmosphere over there. In Paris, the macarons were fantastic. Of course, that's where they come from, the little sandwich cookies. And we had some chocolates and the cheese and the bread and the charcuterie. I mean, that was what I really enjoyed the most in Paris. And then just the culture of the restaurants and how everybody is just stacked so deep and so fun.
That's neat. And then when you contrast that with your time in London, was it a similar culture there, or did you see some significant differences?
So London, everybody says that the food in London is so bad. I mean, that's what everybody has always said. Oh, the food in the UK is no good, I mean, and if you looked at a full English breakfast with the beans and the tomatoes and the sausage and the eggs, I mean, that's like it's like a trip to Cracker Barrel, right? I mean, it's like, it's filling, it's big, it's full. But I mean, we found great food in London, and we liked London more than we did Paris. Could have been where we were staying or what we were doing, but London just had everything you wanted to offer. Right off the bat, we came to a food hall, which was built in an old Catholic church. So you walked into the Catholic church, and there's like a little area where you could buy some plants right off the bat or whatever. But then you walk through the door, so you have the entryway, and then into the church you go, and there's massive stained glass on the back wall there. There's 3 levels. And so you have the bottom or the ground level, and there's restaurants or little shops along the side of the church here. And then the middle, where all the pews would be, are all the dining tables. And so you had everything from charcuterie to steak to Indian to pizza to gelato. You had a wine bar upstairs. You had different things upstairs that were Thai food, Asian food. You had dumplings, just anything you could imagine. So the 3 of us would go in. And Gary, you want pizza? I want Thai food. Paul, you want whatever you want, and you can all get it, come together in a central meeting place and enjoy your food. But the funniest part about it was at the back of the church by the stained glass where the altar would be, they turned that into a beer bar on one side and a gin bar on the other side. So, I'm going to church, and by that I mean I'm going to the pub. I mean,
somebody
really
must have
great
fun.
Food. Yeah.
Wow, that is so neat. That is so neat. You spent a longer time there in London than you did in Paris. If you had your druthers, would you go back to London and experience more of that, or would you like to go back to Paris and experience more of that?
I would drop everything right this second and go back to London. I would take the headphones off, say, Gary, Paul, I'm sorry, I'm out of here, because I actually miss it. It was such a good time. It's probably our favorite city, and that's really the first time I've been there. But we did all the things and saw all the places, but it's just really about the people and about how they treat you and their attitude. And then it's just fantastic over there. I mean, we were right next to Hyde Park, so we got to walk through the park, and we were walking everywhere doing all the things. But the people themselves are great. They always have kind of a cheery attitude and a good disposition. So that's what we enjoyed the most about it. I think it's just all the people we came across.
How neat. How
Nice.
very neat. If you contrast the food preparation, the chefdoms in Europe versus in the United States, are there big differences there? Or are they just cultural and pretty much the same way of preparing food, same kinds of going after main dishes? Do they do it the same way we do it here in the United States?
So sort of, I would say everything there is much smaller. Everything, they don't have the vast amount of room that we have here in the States. So their kitchens are much smaller. Their restaurants are much smaller, but also they pay much more attention to detail and much more attention to where things come from. Here we have all the labels and all the things, as we talked about in I think the cooking show we did, where read your labels, see what's in your food. Well, they care a lot more about that over in Europe. They care about where their food comes from. They care about what's in it, where did it grow, and who's growing it. And you go to the market, 2 or 3 times a week, as opposed to one major supermarket run like we do here in the States. And so everything's a little more fresh, and they pay, like I said, a little more attention to detail about what the item is. So quality in, quality out. You don't have things sitting in your fridge rotting and really have all the waste like we have over here. So I would say that's a big difference.
My sense is, probably from some movies that I've seen, is that they pay particular attention to going out and buying the food in the markets during the beginning of the day, so they can prepare that at night. Over here in the United States, my sense is that some places will do that, but a lot of places do stack it up. It's in a refrigerator, you go get it. You plan ahead on that. But Europe, to me, seems like, hey, let's make the meal we're going to have today. What's available? What's fresh foods? What vegetables? Let's go get those and bring it in. Is that how you saw it?
Absolutely, yeah. We did a food tour in Paris, where it was we met with a guide, and he took us around to a bakery. He took us around to a cheese shop, a meat shop, a chocolate shop, and we got to see what all you would do just as a Parisian walking around town, and how you go around this area. And you would go up and you'd say, hey, this is fresh. This looks good. We're going to take some of this. We're going to take some of this cheese and some of the bread. And we went back and had a fantastic meal. But he did talk a lot about that, about how, you would do 2 or 3, maybe even 4 runs a week just to go and grab your items that you need. Now, of course, you're going to have your staple items, your flour, butter, sugar, things like that. But as far as the sides, the meats, the starches, things like that, like you'll probably get those at the store, those 3 or 4 times that you go in a week. So I like that. I think it's great, because I don't know what I want to eat today or tomorrow, but I'm the typical American. I go and I do 1 grocery run a week, and hopefully I cook it all.
So that in mind, does that mean when people go to a restaurant, a lot of times there is not like a set menu? It's like, this is what we're preparing today?
We didn't really run across that. It was typically a set menu, but like I said, things are smaller there. They don't probably have the giant walk-in refrigerators and freezers like we have here, where, when I was at UCA, the local college here is the chef. We're feeding 4,000 kids a day. And so our dry storage was basically like a convenience store. It was massive, and you could probably fit 2 of the cafes in that dry storage, as far as like the size of the ones in Paris and London, because everything's so much smaller. So I think the kitchens there are smaller, the storage is smaller, and their trucks, they probably get those trucks in more frequently than we do here in the States. But they had set menus, and so it was a typical restaurant experience.
Yeah, that's neat. That's very, very neat. Did you get a chance to talk to any chefs while you were over there?
Actually, I did. It was really interesting. In Paris, in the hotel we stayed in, the hostess, or not the hostess, but the front desk lady, she showed us to a little patio area. We came in and had a glass of wine and sat down, and she sat with us, and she said her dad was a chef. Well, that's cool. Where does he work? And she told us a few places. And then he showed up. I mean, so it was, 10 o'clock at night, and we're sitting there talking to the front desk lady and then her father, who's a chef. And so he and I spoke a lot about different things. Now, he's speaking kind of broken English and I'm speaking minimal French. I mean, I know enough to make my way through in a French restaurant and order for myself and my wife. But when you try speaking a different language to a Parisian or somebody from France, your confidence level goes way down. Bonjour. Parlez-vous anglais? Like, I don't speak any French. So, but it was great. We spoke about different things, similarities. I mean, there's always going to be that common bond between chefs or between anybody in the same field. But I mean, it was really fun to talk to him about labor, and that's just an issue everywhere right now across the world, and just different things that you'd go through as a chef.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hey, we haven't really touched base with kind of going into the world of chefs very much. This has been so enjoyable, Jason, just hearing about your experience over in London and in Paris. We'll have to come back and visit again, but I'm noticing that we're getting close to the end of our 20 minutes. So before we do close things out, I would love to give you the opportunity to say something about your podcast, let people know where to go if they wanted to come watch your podcast, or if somebody wanted to reach out and talk to Chef Jason and say, I've got a question. How would they do that if they wanted to reach you?
Sure. Yeah. So it's Chef and Podcast with Chef Jason. So Chef and Podcast, all one word. And that can be on Spotify or Google or Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcast, you can find it there. Then also chefandpodcast@gmail.com. So chef and then the letter N and then podcast@gmail.com. Reach out, any questions, any people who want to be a guest on there, be happy to have you. So that's where you can find it.
Awesome. Hey, Paul, we're going to have to close this thing up here. And I want to thank our great guest, Chef Jason, the world traveler, world chef, amazing start from Waffle House all the way up to what he's doing today. Has been a friend of our podcast, and really, truly, thank you for coming on. I hope we can get back with you later on, Chef Jason, and talk a little bit about chefs, top chefs, good kitchens, and get a little bit of that. But today's been very, very enjoyable. So thank you for taking the time to join with us.
My
today.
pleasure. Always happy to be
hey, and for everybody in our audience, Paul's going to close us out here, but thank you for listening and for the feedback. We always enjoy that. Paul, you want to wrap us up here?
I will wrap us up. Hey, Jason, again, thank you so much for being on. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to you coming on again. Really, I love your take on cooking and your observations, and you do have a really great podcast. So if anyone wants to get a hold of us, you can reach us by emailing at cetrain@isu.edu. You can go to our website to check us out at cetrain.isu.edu. And you can call us at 208-282-3372. Thank you very much for listening, and everyone be safe out there.